All I see is that it says live.
It's live.
Here we are.
Yeah, we're live right now. Cool. So, Destiny, it's always super fun to hang out with you. Somehow I don't hear your audio right now.
You don't hear my audio at
I hear
all?
you now. Very good.
Okay, good.
Very good.
My voice is a little lower, so it might not always come through. I'm trying to pitch it a little higher.
Yeah, thank you for talking with us today, because I know that you have been a little bit under the weather, but you're on the mend.
On the mend, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So today I wanted to chat with you about artistry. And you're always such a great example of artistry. And in particular, I want to talk about what I call the three pillars of artistry. Because I think, artistry is such a massive topic, right? And so it's easy to get overwhelmed by it. But in fact, if we have a few things that we can hang on to, it makes it far more easy to be artistic. And I think, as human beings, we just are artistic. It's our way. So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, let's see. I was wondering, why don't we just dive in, pretty much right away with talking a little bit about your artistry. Oh, can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah. So a little.
I can't hear you.
You can? Yeah.
I apologize. We're getting this delay a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. So if you could just share a little bit about your artistic background with us, and then we'll jump into our three pillars.
Well, I want to say that for me, my artistic background probably began as a child. I was always singing, and as a young person, and throughout high school, I sang through high school, and then didn't touch anything really musically until my 30s. So I was always singing. I'm not a visual artist, but always singing and always hearing music in different ways. So that I can honestly, that's probably really my artistic background, if you will. Sang as a child. First started the harp when I was 9 years old. Wanted to have that happen. It didn't happen. And so I sang my way through a large portion of my life just singing. High school, I sang in high school and just about any group that would have me. And then after high school, I didn't sing after that at all. Maybe once in college, I went to college very briefly, but I didn't pursue it because I really didn't know what the process was. And so I didn't venture into it again until I turned 30 and I got my first harp. And then that's when my artistry really started to take off.
Ooh, I love that. So actually, let's jump into beginner's mind, because you were a beginner right there with the harp, right? At 30, and what do you have to say about beginner's mind? For me, this is one of the big pillars of artistry.
I love the beginner's mind. I love the beginner's mind. The beginner's mind is fresh and is excited and willing to just about celebrate everything that it learns. Sometimes you can meet a beginner's mind that's frustrated if it's a beginner's mind and it's a mind that figures, I should know this already. That's a beginner's mind that I have to tip. And we all start out this way. We all start out learning our musical alphabet, if you will, and the procedure. We start out this way, so let's celebrate learning this way. For the most part, when folks, and I'll include myself, I remember when I finally got past the idea that I'm 30 years old and I'm choosing to start this instrument, and why is my teacher starting me with Yankee Doodle or twinkle twinkle, why is this person starting me with these songs? I said, I'm 30 years old. But the beauty to that is we all get to start at that same place. What we do with it is left up to us, and to celebrate the beginner's mind. So for me, the beginner's mind is priceless, and it's imperative for me to keep the beginner's mind even in quote unquote advanced music. In the process of creating my own music, it's important for me to keep that beginner's mind. Yeah.
God, I love that so much. Yeah. I mean, that kind of freshness and that wonder, I think that is actually one of our main forms of motivation in music.
Yes.
You know, like when we remember why we took up harp in the first place, that beginner's mind, right? Yeah. When we engage in that, the whole jadedness that we get sometimes as musicians as time goes on disappears, you know?
Yes.
We are back in touch with that very joyful, juicy aspect of playing, you know? And I think, yeah, the more that we...
Touching your instrument for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, or singing your first song for the first time.
Right, right. I mean, it's so much, oh my God, you know, with beginner's mind, what I find is that you actually already know a lot of things. You know what I mean? So you're never really a true beginner. And when you have the beginner's mind, you're sort of bringing in a little bit of what you already know. You're kind of cross-training a little bit automatically. And then kind of the more you know, the more you start separating things out and not making those connections anymore. You know? Yeah. And yeah. And I think also with the beginner's mind, there's a real lack of judging yourself. You know, I think sometimes there is, though, when you were saying, like, when you were a beginner, you know, feeling like, okay, you know, I'm this age, I should have this done. But there's another part where you're not as judgmental of yourself, if you know what I mean. Yes.
And that's the part that I don't know if we want to kill the inner critic, but it's imperative. It's imperative to either soothe that inner critic, because a lot of times it's really only our own selves that are already criticizing our ability, or we hear that little voice going, yeah, you know, blah 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 blah. And it's just like, shut up.
Yeah.
You know, but what that means is we get to learn how to be, or not maybe even learn, just accept the moment and to stay very present. There's some teachers who start out where you only get to play one string and enjoy the sound.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find it interesting that, you know, we go along and we learn more and more complex pieces, and then we achieve that kind of mastery, and suddenly we start going the other way and realizing the value of that single string. And we actually start enjoying simpler music more. We value it more. Have you experienced that as well?
Oh, yes. You know, you're talking about learning more advanced pieces of music, and it requires this level of straight dedication, commitment, and overt repetition. And then sometimes there's just this one tone in that song that every time it just makes my heart just, or a chord in this particular song, every time I hear that chord, I just, I want to fall out.
I love it.
I don't know what that is, but it's just that particular sound that just resonates with me on some level.
So I also found it really interesting. You were saying, you know, with beginner's mind, you don't necessarily want to throw out self-criticism, you know, like self-critique, should we say? And actually, for me, that goes straight on to the second principle, which is presence. And for me, you know, presence is the idea of being truly present to what you're doing and listening to what you're doing. And without that presence, it's very hard to have artistry. So if we're saying artistry is playing with expression and creativity, I think that's a pretty good definition of it. I think you must be present to win, you know. Would you say that?
Truly.
Yeah.
I would absolutely say that. You know, we live in a time where we have a lot of homes and our wonderful spouses and the world around us. It is this beautiful set of distractions. And if I recall correctly, there's a proverb that says people love distractions.
Uh-huh.
We're in love with them. And to the point where we say we want to do something, but every time something floats by, we're just distracted by it. I think of one of my favorite movies, The Matrix, where Neo and Morpheus are walking through the first program in the very first one. And Neo is looking at everything happening around him, but Morpheus is straight ahead. And Morpheus doesn't even turn around to look at him. He's walking straight ahead. He goes, "Oh, did you like the woman in the red dress?" Because he turned around to look at her. He said, "Turn around and look at her again." And once we lose our enamor for the distractions and focus in completely on the present, there's a richness that happens in the present, which goes back to that single tone and finding the beauty. And even that one, not even the chord, we go back to the single string. And that single pitch. Am I there?
Yeah, hang on just a sec. Somehow I'm hearing you somewhere else. Hang on.
Okay. Hi, Anya.
Hey there.
Hey.
Sorry about that. We somehow your voice was running through all the way to the kitchen. So, huh?
Turn off your Bluetooth.
Okay. I think my Bluetooth was on, so it was transmitting you. Now it's off. Let's see now.
Great.
Seems pretty good. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
So
just being able to having the ability to remain in the present. It's a commitment. I can say it's a commitment. Hi. So I'm seeing folks are joining.
Yeah.
It is a commitment, and I know for myself, I can't speak for anyone else that I have, because sometimes I like to have a lecture going on when I'm practicing, which means that I've got one ear hearing the lecture and one ear actually paying attention to the practice. And so neither one of them gets served as well as they could. I don't get the benefit of fully listening to the lecture because I'm trying to practice at the same time. But what I find for myself is that when I say I'm going to commit to this, and I'll commit to the lecture later on, I'll commit just to listening to me practice, and I'm going to record me and listen back.
Oh, God. Yeah.
I know. There's the critique.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just as a spoiler alert, the third pillar, as you know, is deep listening. And I think once we get into that, then we're really going to talk about recording as what a massive tool for learning and to play with artistry, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm really
requires a commitment. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested in this idea of removing distractions, because I think we have almost no idea how distracted we are.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Apparently people's attention span has gone down to 8 seconds now. It used to be something like 20, which wasn't fabulous, but I heard in the 1920s, somehow they calculated that it was 20 seconds long. So maybe these things aren't totally precise, but the idea is we have less than half the attention span of what we used to. And I think partly we've trained ourselves that way, because I don't think we've changed physiologically that much in 100 years, but I think we have no idea how distracted we really are. Do you know what I
think
mean?
part of that, yeah, I do. And I think part of that is because we're always multitasking.
Yes.
As opposed to maybe, and this is something that I've learned to do for myself, is that, say, I'm going to commit to this for 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
which means that it gets my full attention, and then something else will get my commitment for 10 minutes. And that can at least narrow down the distractions.
Right.
However, you know, if we've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram happening, and all the alerts are going on at the same time while we've quote unquote made this commitment,
right,
then we're still overtly distracted. And like you said, we don't even know that we're this distracted. And we think that, and we start shooting on ourselves. Well, I should be doing this. I should be posting. I shoulda. And then so we got this self-flagellation going on.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about artists, you don't think about them in the middle of a crowded room with a bunch of things going on. You know, the idea is that you are, putting time aside, like sanctuary time. And I really, encourage my students and myself, have to take my own advice, to have a dedicated place for your harps, sometimes people don't really have a permanent place for their harps. And right there's no presence for the harp itself. And then once you actually get into practice mode, just turning off that phone automatically will make the quality of your practice better and the artistic value of it much higher, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Even I know some folks may feel like they just can't turn it off.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you encourage is to put it on airplane mode.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty painless.
It is pretty painless. Put it so you don't get and even put it on airplane mode and put a timer at 10 minutes. Is one of the beautiful things to having if you have a metronome that also has a timer on there, and say, well, for 10 minutes, even if you don't put the metronome on, you only put the time on.
Even your phone timer will work.
Your phone
on airplane mode. Yeah.
And it's that level of commitment right in there that if we give ourselves permission to do that. I saw someone just put up there, should is such a killer. It really is. Because should is like one of the children of guilt.
So Madison's saying, should is such a killer of joy. Absolutely. Thank you, Madison. Yeah. That's not one of our pillars of artistry. There's no shoulds.
No should.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, beginner's mind is the opposite of should.
Oh, yes.
Beginner's mind is all about opening the doors wide and having the energy available to you to come to you. It's a very, non-judgmental and excited place. And then with presence, we're starting to move into focus. And that's what I'm saying. We're going to create this space, physical space and mental space to work in. And that's where we can start introducing discernment, self-critique, but in no way judgments about yourself about good or bad. Those are usually not pertinent at all to learning harp.
Absolutely not. Everyone is learning and creating. Just do the mantra, right?
Do is the mantra. Thank you, Carla. Totally.
Mantra, love it.
Just do. Yeah. Yeah. Beginner's mind is very much just do, isn't it? And presence, actually.
The beginner is excited, and the present portion of it is excited in a different way, because in that state of presence, one is saying, I'm going to make a commitment to, like I said, I like that 10-minute, where I'm going to make a commitment to doing this right now. Nothing else gets my attention but this. For instance, if you're learning an advanced piece, and it really, and it's got fingering things in the whole yada. And you say, well, you know what? I'm going to commit 10 minutes to this, and I have a piece like this that I'm learning, and I'm going to commit 10 minutes of this each day until I actually have the piece fully memorized and in my body. and I'm going to record myself. We're going to talk about deep listening, and
Yeah.
I'm going to record myself, but I'm going to do these things every day on this particular piece. So if it takes me 10 minutes on one portion of that me piece, maybe it's only doggone uh, maybe it's only one bar, and that one bar requires all of that 10 minutes, then that one bar gets all of that 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually how artistry works, right? It's actually not this mystical thing that just gets visited upon you, and that some people are talented and some people are not. You know, some people have the gift and some people don't. I mean, I would say some people seem to have more interest and some people don't. I definitely will say that. But what really brings out artistry are these tools that we're talking about, these very specific things that you do. Because, you know, it's easy to say presence. You need to be present. Yeah, but how? How do you do that? And when you're talking about these really practical things, like these 10-minute increments that you're talking about, like working on these small chunks, taking away the distractions, those are presence. You know,
question, what is your process for absorbing a piece?
Yeah, this is a good question. What is your process for absorbing a piece and making it your own rather than just playing the music as shown? Okay, well, first off, Carla and Destiny, I'm going to let you take a shot at this. Of course, it's a great question for you. I think by engaging in the beginner's mind immediately as you're playing the piece, you know, you're like a kid in a candy shop. You've got this incredible piece and you're really, you know, literally playing with it. That starts to make it your own. Because as I mentioned, you know, when we're in that beginner's mind, we start to recruit all this extra energy and extra wisdom that's already in our bodies. So for instance, our bodies naturally have rhythm in them. I really don't think there are many people who seriously don't have any rhythm, but I think maybe they're not in touch with their bodies. And so then they don't have any rhythm. So when you're in that beginner's mind, you're playing, automatically the piece will just start sounding like you. That will be your own. You won't sound like someone else or mechanical. And then, of course, if you're really present, that means you're really listening. That's, again, starting to make it your own. You're not on automatic pilot. Playing on automatic pilot, not being present, right? This definitely leads to sort of wooden style playing, should we say. Yeah. What do you think, Destiny?
Carla, when you ask what is your process for absorbing a piece, one, the repetition is very important for me, but also I have visuals that happen for me in pieces. I don't explain why that is, but when I'm engaging with the music and I'm seeing this visual that's happening in a particular bar, and you're probably asking, well, what does that mean? I remember once when I was learning Pachelbel's canon, there was this portion of it that sounded like spinach to me. I don't know why. It sounded like spinach.
Are you saying
but
spinach?
Right, spinach.
Yeah.
I could see fresh, and even now I can see fresh leaves of spinach in this particular piece. And I don't know how spinach translated out in my playing, but that was a portion of how I absorbed it and how I made it my own, because that's what I was seeing visually. I remember once I was doing a version of Roberta Flack's "Killing Me Softly," and I have a storyline happening in my head, even though the song has its own storyline. A song that I partnered with it was a song called "Skyrider" by the Jackson 5. Skyrider, write her name across the sky. Skyrider, write it high, write it high. And so what I could actually see, she says that I could see an airplane writing. She says I'm no beginner. I could actually see a skywriter, her not kind of kitschy, cheesy like, but a real writing. I could actually see that in my head, and it for me it was like having a personal movie and playing along with my own sound, my own movie. So I want to say that, and because I think many of us just kind of we get those and we bypass it, and we don't think anything of that. But I think that we need to pay attention to the little nuances of things that come to us in the process that would help us to absorb it and to really make the music our own, so that when we're delivering it,
Yeah.
don't bypass any of that information that you get the downloads from the music. Some people think that they're distractions, but for me they're a part of the music.
Something I've gotten very interested in lately is synesthesia. And you're talking a lot about that, Destiny, the idea that there actually, there's crossover between the senses. So there are visuals within sounds. There are visuals between touch and feel. There's a crossover between taste and sound, even smell and movement, or all the different 5 senses. There's actually a lot of crossover. And again, children seem more in touch with this. So again, going back to the sort of beginner's mind mindset. So, but beginner's mind doesn't mean you're actually a beginner. You could be an incredibly advanced player engaging in beginner's mind. So you're engaging in that freshness. And when, for instance, savants, those people who have these incredible feats of memory that describe what it is that they're doing, they'll oftentimes talk about synesthesia and say that for them, certain numbers have a sound and a shape and a color, even an emotion attached to them. And that's why they can just remember these sequences so easily. Like there was this guy, I think his name is Daniel Tassett, maybe, or Taffet, I can't remember. But he remembered pi, that mathematical number, 22,500 places. Like he could remember that, and he learned it for just a couple of weeks or so. And they asked him, how did you do this? And he said, well, it's like I see that the pi is a landscape. So the number pi, for anybody who just jumps on right now. So he just is basically reading the landscape. Wow. And that's when he's saying out all these numbers. And so when I do centering, so I'm a huge fan of the 7 steps of centering. The 6th step is where you embody your song with all your senses. You feel it, you hear it, you see it, you can taste it. Like Celtic songs are very salty to me, whereas Middle Eastern music, it's more spicy, cinnamon, cardamom, and you can even smell it, like smell the salt air, or, smell, literally the smell of cinnamon. And all this gets so, embedded in you, and all this wisdom starts coming out. And that's, I think, where you get a lot of expression, and it definitely makes it your own. Oh, thank you, Jillian. Yes. Daniel Tammet, Tammet. Very interesting guy. Very interesting guy.
How do we maintain focus on a piece?
Okay, great. Kemp, hello from New Zealand. How do we maintain focus on a piece when distractions of new pieces come up and pull us away from what we should be practicing? Hey, Destiny, I'll let you take that one.
Oh, my God.
It's a tough one.
Folks, people love distractions. And so the new piece just becomes you're starting on a new piece, but then other new pieces are becoming the distractions. You go, oh, I need to learn this, and this one would sound even better. Oh, but there has to be, I get that. I understand that.
I think it's
And,
called
and
shiny object syndrome.
that's, whoo, you said it best. Because that's what it is. That's what it is. And so the opportunity is that make the choice and make the commitment. And
Be
that's
present.
be present to the piece that you have. Don't treat it like a forlorn lover.
Yes, sir.
Be present with the piece. If you made a commitment to that piece, choose what you chose. I am learning a piece that probably for many is probably very simple. It's called Solo pour Corps. It's for harp and harp and French horn. So beautiful. He's saying, you know that. It's for French horn or harp, and it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. And I'm going back to a teacher who I absolutely love, who was no nonsense with me. She said, learn the piece from the back to the front. Start at the back and work your way forward. I had tons of the pieces calling me. They are just like boyfriends. There are boyfriends trying to get with my program. Come on, girl. You know you want to play with this. Come on, girl. And it's like, I'm doing this right now. This is what I'm doing. And it's 5 pages long. But I'm committed to this piece because I've also have a goal with this piece to actually have it intrinsically ingrained in my DNA so that I have it. And when my hands stretch out to play it, that it's there. When my feet reach out to play the pedals, it's there. I have no fear because I've made a commitment to it. Even amongst the other things that I have, this is my personal commitment to this piece right now. And it's part of that 10-minute syndrome where I do 10 minutes on it, make sure that I have that bar, and then I record it and listen back for myself.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a good point you're making, because I do think a lot of performance anxiety comes from lack of preparation, that people actually have not committed to the piece in the first place, really. And so then they don't actually know it. And so they go out on stage and for sure they're anxious because at that moment they know they don't know it 100%. And so this presence piece will really help with performance anxiety, which is, a big issue for the vast majority of musicians until they learn, a system to handle it, such as what you're doing. And then I have a system that I use. But it has to be a conscious effort, right?
That conscious effort for me, and I love what you're doing, that 7 pillars. It is so important because it really is all about a commitment. Make the commitment, choose what you chose, and move through it beautifully. If you make that commitment, it'll reward you.
Yeah. Yeah. And, another point on this committing to a piece is you're committing to it because you do love it. I think you can't really commit to a piece you don't love. And if you start going down the road of a piece and you fall out of love with it, the honorable thing to do is let it go, right? Because I think you can't truly master it. You can't really be present with it. Part of your heart will always be somewhere else, I mean, do you love the piece with the French horn?
Oh, I do love this piece.
Right. So then you can commit.
I can commit to it, and it's a sweet do it. And it was brought to me by a French hornist who has since went on to do other stuff. So it's like, well, I'm going to do this piece because I really like it. I really, really, really love this piece. So I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it well, and at least I'll have it mastered for me. Sometimes musically, there are things that I choose to do that are just good for me. It's good for me to follow through on what I said I was going to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, being present with yourself when you're doing it. You say, I'm going to honor that thing. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. So we've been talking about presence. We covered beginner's mind because I feel like, you kind of have to set the stage, as I mentioned, with beginner's mind, with this openness. And then we start to get into this presence where we're focused. And then the next one for me is the deep listening.
Yes.
And so at that point, you're really saying, is this working or is this not? Mm-hmm. You're really objectively hearing what your end result is. You know, because one question I get a lot from harpists is they say they don't actually know if they're playing expressively or not. They can't tell, you know, and the deep listening comes into that. I think, you know, we have a certain fear of hearing ourselves, of listening to ourselves. You know, it's like, you know, having a difficult conversation with someone, you know, and you're hearing what they're saying, but you're kind of like, you know, and sometimes we're doing the same thing on our harp. We're not really listening to it. So this idea of just bearing witness to what is happening with your harp, this deep listening.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think part of that, when you're talking about other harpists not really listening, and I've been a part of the harp community for 25 years now. And I find that many of us beat ourselves up relentlessly. We're afraid to hear ourselves because we're judging ourselves in comparison to who and to what. And the larger question is why are we comparing ourselves to something? Not even the what, but why in the world are you comparing yourself? Even me, why in the world are you comparing yourself to somebody else?
Right.
What does that have to do with the price of butter in Berkeley? How does it help me to play better if I'm comparing myself to someone else? Because then that just becomes another critic, and then they're afraid to listen to ourselves. And so the opportunity for me, that's why I record myself, and I can listen. I was like, oh no, you were really focused when you recorded that one. Yeah. So, and I'll delete it. And I'll play it again. Oh, you were really listening to yourself that time.
And you can hear the difference, right? You can really hear that difference so much. You can
hear the difference so much, but it's one, we go back to the commitment and a deeper listening listening to the piece, whether even if the piece has a recording somewhere and you're listening to it, or just listening to oneself play. Yeah. When you're playing it and not just getting tangled up in fingerings and notes and pedal pushes and lever movements, but how are you feeling?
Right.
I mean, because we have a lot of those dynamics going on.
It's never been easy to record yourself. You know, we all have a recording studio right here, and of course, you know, it's not super high fidelity. You know, you're not going to be necessarily thrilled with the sound recording, but it's a pretty good rough version.
Oh man, the documentation that we would get that will help us to move to the level that we want to record it. I mean, the fear has been the killer for many of us of being fully expressed and deeper listening. It has been the killer. The self-flagellation. I use that term because we have our own personal whips and we're beating ourselves up about stuff. And then what if somebody else recorded? So we said, "Oh, I actually sounded pretty good there."
Yeah. So it's such a great reality check on all levels to do the recording. You know, and then you get more used to, you know, your tendencies. You hear those little, you know, habits that you might have, and it's so much easier to identify them. I mean, I oftentimes will use them during lessons, so recordings. So, and what I love about it is it does what would take 2 lessons for me to explain verbally by just having the student listen back. They're like, oh, okay. And then they fix it, like right there.
Yes.
You know, I'm not kidding. It's so powerful to have this type of listening, but it is a deep listening because you are not playing at the same time. You are being very objective. You are hearing it.
Well, now we get to be the observer of ourselves.
Yeah. It's very unique. People didn't used to be able to do this. You know, it's such an incredible tool for us.
It's an excellent tool, like you said, and we get a deeper listening and just the opportunity to sit with our instrument. There's a friend of ours, Brian Stegers, who lives in San Juan Bautista. Brian was building Celtic harps for a while. He would tell me, he said, you know, go into your room with your harp, turn the lights out, and just play and listen.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So good. So it's a deep practice.
It is a deep practice. And we get to evolve portions of ourselves that may not have been evolved any other way.
Sorry. The cooking is going on now. Sorry, guys. This is clearly live. My partner, Brian, he's cooking some fish. Or maybe he's burning dinner. Sorry.
No worries. No worries. But it's such a beautiful opportunity to listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm thinking of the 7 things that you said that you do.
Yeah. So the 7 steps of present. Oh, look at that. He's coming in to prove that it looks amazing. It looks gorgeous. Thank you, baby. It didn't burn. It's true. Our smoke alarm is incredibly sensitive, and that does look perfect. Thank you. So, yeah, talking about distractions, where are we? Yeah.
We're talking about deep listening, and you were talking about your 7 principles. Are they 7?
So the 7 steps of centering, the first one, actually, I have a whole training of it. It's only 18 minutes long, and people can find it on the Virtual Harp Summit Facebook page.
Nice.
Yeah. And that's because, honestly, if there were only one thing I were allowed to teach, it would be these 7 steps of centering. Because in many ways, they touch on the things that we're talking about today. So your first thing is you form a focal point, and that's where you're starting to bring in your focus. And then you walk through those specific 7 steps. So I encourage people to go check out that very quick tutorial, literally 18 minutes long, and explains the entire thing. Because it sets you up to be utterly present and available for what you're doing. And it doesn't really get much better than that in terms of artistry. That's what we need. We need to be present. We need to be available as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we can't be available with all the distractions.
Yes. Yeah.
The distractions are going to be there.
Oh, yeah. And they are good distractions. There are very interesting things out there, so many interesting things that I would love to get into. And it's a type of discipline, that I have to use on myself to say, you know what, I've got to not do that. I know it's really interesting. I know it's super valid, but I must make that sacrifice, shall we say, something I give up for a sacred cause, for my purpose. Yes. Because right now, unfortunately, at this moment, it doesn't look like I'm going to live to 1,000. At this moment, you never know. You never know. Oh, great. Thank you. Jillian, she shared, this is the link here. You can see part of it. But what you're going to do is go to the Virtual Harp Summit Facebook page. So facebook.com/Virtual Harp Summit. And then you look under the videos. Okay. And you'll be able to find it. The full length is right in the comments, but I can't get it across the screen.
No worries.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Jillian. So, with deep listening, initially how I came to realize how important it was is the work of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk. And deep listening is one of the very cornerstones of his work. And he believes it to be a super powerful tool of transformation. And one of the ways he uses it is in reconciling people who've sometimes been estranged for decades. And they sit across each other. And the deep listening practice is to listen to the first person say their piece. And you don't try to comment. You don't try to debate. You actually absolutely witness them. And even by them going through that, huge transformations happen as they unburden themselves, and that they're witnessed and heard. And I feel the same way about music. It's by that really deep listening to what's coming out with the music is honored.
Yes.
You know what I mean? In that same way. And that kind of energy of healing is generated.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really from him that I came to change a lot of the way that I perform. Because when I perform, I'm actually not thinking about the audience. I mean, of course, sometimes I do, but I try not to, because what I want to do is listen to the music and be 100% present to, the muse and what's the energies that are going around that are trying to come through and say something.
Yes.
So, yeah. So it was really from that perspective that I first realized how important deep listening was. And then all this other stuff started revealing itself too. Great stories like the harp maker saying, let's play in the dark,
Yes.
all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Wow. So, Carla has something to say about the 7 steps. 7 steps are so powerful. So that's of centering, and they help me grow and mellow out after working 50 hours a week on my full-time job. Wow, Carla, that's a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, good for you doing the centering. Yeah, centering actually, yes, it works for anything in life. You're going into a difficult meeting or you're stuck in traffic, you find yourself getting annoyed. 7 steps of centering.
Yes, tempering the road rage or the potential for road rage.
Yeah. And I also recommend doing it before practicing, because it sets you up to just be in just the right frame of mind to get a really productive practice. Yeah. So that was the deep listening. Super. So, we have been talking about these 3 pillars of artistry, and I see them, sort of like a stool, right? You want to have all those 3 legs going on at the same time. Otherwise, the chair falls over. Because we can be a little bit too strict on ourselves, right? If we don't have beginner's mind, we're just all about presence and deep listening. We can then sometimes be a little bit too nose to the grindstone. We need the lightness of the beginner's mind.
Absolutely. The beginner's mind is so refreshing.
Yeah.
It's very refreshing.
It is truly refreshing.
It's just very refreshing.
Yeah. So, thank you, Carla. That is very sweet of you to say. Yeah. So just to recap some of the very practical ways that people can work on these 3 pillars of artistry. We were talking about beginner's mind. For me, one of the great ways to do that is to remember why you started harp in the first place and get into that frame of mind. Because then your harp will sound super fresh, right? And then in using the 7 steps of centering, in particular, step number 6, where you embody your music with all your senses, you smell it, you taste it, touch it, see it, of course, hear it, that can just bring this huge beginner's mind joy.
Yes.
And, what should we say? The kind of juicy energy, that surprising energy that flows through you.
I was just thinking, I just saw someone write that. Kathleen, he says that.
I see it right here. Yeah, it's easy to go through the motions when playing or performing, but deep listening does make you present for the music. I also find it energizing. Yes, absolutely.
Me too.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah. All of the things we're talking about today are crucial for motivation, right? So when we're using these tools, motivation skyrockets because we remember why we're doing something. It's engaging. It's interesting. We're there,
After we had our first time, I believe my harp, someone says thought.
Let's see. Kim thought, after we had our first child, I believe my harp sound and playing changed. After we experienced a death in the family, I believed it changed again. Do you both believe this happens as part of our own harp playing evolutions? 1,000%. I believe that personally. Yeah, Destiny. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very much so.
When my mother died, she actually died on a Good Friday, and I was off playing at Grace Cathedral. And I could feel the difference. Oh, it was almost like I was getting visitations from her and my grandmother from that point on. Not so much now, but then. And I could feel the difference, even in the tonality. And the tonality and the way I would play, not necessarily with some aggressiveness, but definitely with a level of assertiveness that happened after my mother passed.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely believe this, and it's a reason why I'm so supportive of cross-training, what I call cross-training, which is acknowledging how the different things in your life are actually training for your playing.
Yes.
So, obvious things are yoga and dance and things like that, how those affect your harp playing. But then we're talking about spiritual growth and emotional growth. How do those affect your harp playing? Absolutely, they do, in that cross-training way. I mean, as with your life, so with your harping.
Yes. Because for me, harp became a continuation of life. But like some of my contemporaries that started so much younger, for me, it became an extension of my life, a continuation. It was like, there's life and there's harp. No, harp is
right. Yeah. 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 I love that. That. So, so remembering why you started, and then the 7 steps. Do you have another tip for people, a practical tip for people on beginner's mind? So I'm just kind of wrapping us up now, reminding people of the practical actions they can take on what kind of can seem like quite esoteric material. You're very welcome, Kemp. Yeah.
And you're right. And it can seem very esoteric.
Right.
1, make the commitment. When you have a piece and you love it, you're going to get tons of shiny other pieces that are going to come. Make a commitment to that and love it all the way through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make that commitment.
And in that commitment, you had some other practical advice for being present, practicing in reasonable chunks, like saying, I'm going to give myself 10 minutes. That's a realistic chunk to be 100% committed. No phone on, no smoke alarms going off, no Bluetooth broadcasting to the kitchen, this kind of stuff. You really do want to set aside that time and space, but don't look for like 2 hours. I mean, if you have it, fabulous, but I don't know anybody who does at the moment. These 10-minute increments here and there, utterly focused, are very powerful.
Because you can give yourself 10 minutes. Step away from it and maybe do a movement of yoga. Maybe you might take a prayer moment. You're going to do something else. And then maybe you come back in.
Nice. Refreshed, right? Yeah.
So give yourself that opportunity so that you can come back refreshed and then you can look at it again.
Love it. Love it. And then for the deep listening, probably our biggest recommendation is record yourself. Record yourself on the phone. Listen back. And just get used to it. I do want to give the caveat that the first time you hear yourself, you'll probably freak out, because the harp is incredibly hard to record, let alone recording it on, this is not a recording studio. Your phone is just your phone. But the thing is, what you'll get to know is your strengths and weaknesses right away. And because you can identify what those are, you can use more of your strengths. And then the things that are at this moment weaknesses, you can, of course, transform them. But you can't transform them if you never hear them in the first place.
Again, it's the fear. Most of us, we've got, the fear has a child that's called guilt. And unless we just address them head on, we'll never get to be fully realized as an artistry that we wanted to have happen.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that is just brilliant. That is brilliant. Thank you so much, Destiny. It's been so fun hanging out with you, as always.
You too.
Yeah. And we were talking about artistry. For me, there are basically 5 essential elements of daily practice. And if these elements aren't in your daily practice, or at least in 80% of your daily practices, practicing can kind of go stale or just you don't make progress. One of them is artistry. Next is technique. The third one is inspiration. I consider this to be like a part of practice. Learning, which means that you actually know how to learn. You were talking about going in small chunks. You were talking one measure, sometimes less than a measure.
Yes.
And the final one is community. So I find this an essential part of our practice. Maybe it's an online community, maybe it's in person, but community, even if it's just a spiritual community that you're feeling with past artists or past influences. So we're talking about artistry, that element today. And actually, I think we have a quiz that people are going to be able to take online, which will help them figure out which of their 5 elements they need to bump up a little bit.
Very nice.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that Jillian can pop that in the comments and people will be able to take the quiz. It's a pretty quick quiz and you get your result right away. And plus tips on how to bring up that particular element. So yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah. So I recommend to everybody, take the quiz. And there it is right there, harpcirclequiz.com. Just visit there and it'll show right away. So, and again, today we were talking about artistry, which I consider to be one of the 5 essential elements of daily practice. Nice. Yeah. Thank you so much, Destiny. So where can people find out more about you?
You can find me online at destinymuhammadproject.com.
destinymuhammadproject.com. And do you have any upcoming concerts?
I do. I'm going to be playing on June 18th for Dads and Jazz Festival. That's going to be at the Dunsmuir House in the city of Oakland. And then in August, I'll be doing a tribute to Alice Coltrane in Oakland again. It'll be 2 shows, and you can find all that information.
Great. Oakland, California.
Oakland, California.
Superb. Yeah. And Carla says, honestly, this was very informative and so positive and energizing. I keep it coming, ladies. We will, right, Destiny? Awesome. Yeah. So there we have it for today. If you want to know more about these Facebook Lives, be sure to subscribe to Virtual Harp Summit Facebook page. And also, I have a public page. It's called Diana Rowan, but it's kind of my public school page. And if you are subscribed to those, you get notifications that a Facebook Live is coming up. And these things are a lot of fun.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. So, Anne, thank you. Yes, great. She said, best drive to work ever. She was listening to us on the road. I love the online thing. All right. Yay. Thank you so much to Jillian for helping behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jillian, for the posting.
Yes, superb. And I'll see everybody again soon.
Yes.
Thank you again, Destiny.
Thank you so much.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.